Bienvenidos and welcome to the Injury Prone Podcast. Oh, it's week one. Football is here. Okay, we've already had one game, but we got 15 more to break down. Everybody, nuestra gente, we've got so many games, and you know what? We decided to actually do something a little bit different, trying a little, something poquito diferente, where we're going to break this up into three different episodes. So we're going to start this episode. This is going to be dedicated to running backs, and then we're going to jump into the wide receivers in another episode, and then a third episode on the tight ends, just talking about players that have just important injury questions about them. So a mi lado right here, el doctor Edwin Porras. ¿Cómo estamos, mi amigo?
Estamos bien, as the Dominicans would say, que lo que, Jorge, how are you doing? I'm ready to talk these injuries. I'm ready for week one chatter, man. I know we're going to be dragging by week 12, 13. We're going to be complaining, but we shouldn't complain. We should be happy. We're talking about football. Football's back. We saw the Chiefs get upset. I don't even really call it an upset kind of an upset last night. So we got a little bit of the hangover from that game. At least I do. I'm always like that gif, like that Dave Chappelle gif where y'all got any more of that football? Got any more of that NFL football for me? I'm sort of feeling like that right now. So I'm ready for Sunday. Let's get into it, amigo.
Oh, definitely. So you know what? We got some running backs to talk about, and let's start it up. Breece Hall, right there. He's coming back from that ACL, and first game back, got Dalvin Cook, and fantasy managers still drafted him highly. They did not drop him down too much when it came to ADP. But could there still be a little bit of slow playing for him?
Yeah, I think this was always a part of the plan. So when you see that Breece Hall played about the amount that Jahmyr Gibbs played last night in Thursday Night Football, don't be surprised if that happens, up to maybe 50% of the snaps. That's just the way that they're going to play it. He's been limited in practice. They're ramping him up. This is totally normal. By the end of September, you're going to see that he's going to be close to completely ramped up. I do think they're going to do, they're going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more pony packages with him. If you're worried about where you drafted Breece Hall, I'll give you the upside case. In 2018, Jorge, you might remember James White. He played about 50% of the snaps, and he finishes the RB10 on a points per game basis. 50% of the snaps is not very much, obviously. We do think that Breece Hall is probably going to play a shade over 50% of the snaps by the time that he gets back to full speed. And we know that he brings another dimension to this offense. Aaron Rodgers has said it himself. Aaron Rodgers, in this long quote, said that the offense, and I'm paraphrasing, the offense looks different. Breece Hall brings another dimension because he has another gear that he takes the offense to. So Aaron Rodgers loves his new teammate, his rookie teammate. He says he's a sharp guy. And then the last thing here is, I've already cited all summer long, Jorge, you've heard me say it over and over again, minimally complicated procedure, young age, freak athleticism by NFL standards. All of those boxes, Breece Hall checks. As long as he doesn't have a crazy sort of out of nowhere random injury like Saquon Barkley did in 2021, we should expect Breece Hall to give some sort of, to definitely pay his ADP off. And I do think that James White comparison, finishing as the RB10, is his ceiling. So don't be afraid of the ceiling. The last thing I'll say is Aaron Rodgers also complimented his ass. There's an article saying that Aaron Rodgers said that Breece Hall has a big ass. So he's got a big rear end is what he said. So that's exactly where I'll leave it on Breece Hall.
You know what? But I won't leave it there with Breece Hall because I think you're talking about with James White. That's where Breece Hall is going to differentiate himself because he is such a threat in the passing game. So I'm definitely looking for him. Yeah, maybe it's slow play. And gosh, I just keep thinking about the way Aaron Jones got used in Green Bay. So vamos a ver. The next one, a little more complicado because the Zack Moss may be back, may not be. He suffered a fracture and looks like he's back. What's the forecast here with him, and and we could talk about Deion Jackson and Evan Hall after that.
So I'm looking at the situation. It is a little strange because he just has a fracture. He's coming off a broken arm, essentially. So unless they're really looking at how strong his arm is, and if he hasn't taken contact, we don't know any of that information. We just know that he's been, quote, limited in practice. But limited can mean anywhere from working on, ladder drills on the side with the ATs to you took every rep except 2, right? And that's they consider you limited. There's so much in between. We don't really know what that means. And the Colts don't know if they'll activate them, is what they say. I think they already know what the decision is. There's really, you either know or you don't. It's just a fracture. It's not something complicated like you can test out on game day. Like, they're either going to start him or they're not. I think it could go either way. It's kind of a coin flip. And that matters for guys like Evan Hull. It matters for guys like you mentioned, Deion Jackson. But really, I just don't want any part of this backfield. I don't really think that there's much value to be had. Ultimately, Zack Moss should be back, I think, within the next week, if not week 1, week 2. But really, I'm not targeting them. But I did want to talk about him just because I know that some fantasy managers might be wondering about him.
Yeah, my recommendation has been Evan Hull, just because he's the one who can catch passes, and maybe he'll see some. I mean, this is gonna be just such an offense that we don't know how it's going to break down, because Anthony Richardson is an unknown quantity. So, but yeah, when in doubt, I default to the pass catching back. Our last running back that we're going to talk about is actually Kenneth Walker III. And so we're looking at him. He's been slowed at the end. It's a groin, right? What is, what are the? I mean, we know not to. As a Seattle Seahawks fan, not to trust Pete Carroll.
Yeah, so Kenneth Walker's officially off the injury report with a groin issue, but this isn't something to monitor, because this was something that Kenneth Walker was dealing with prior to actually having a recurrence. So this is technically considered a recurrence. So the more times that you see this happen, the more concerned you should be. The advice here is, if you have Walker, you have to start him. I think that this week, Walker specifically from a DFS perspective is, I think, a GPP play only. I don't know if you've ever even really would make him a cash play, but he is a GPP play for me. And then in season long leagues, I'm aggressively targeting Zach Charbonnet simply for upside. Now, don't go out and blow your 3rd, 4th round pick, whoever that is, for Zach Charbonnet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if he's out on your waiver wire, or if somebody drops him, or week 2, week 3 rolls around, whoever has him drops him, he is good upside for you to stash on your bench, because Kenneth Walker is at risk for another recurrence for this groin issue. And the worst case scenario, which again, we knock on wood, we don't wish this to happen, but he could have a situation where they shut him down at some point for a much longer extended period of time. That's Kenneth Walker. And if that's the case, obviously you're going to want Zach Charbonnet. So that's just a little bit of a tidbit there.
Speaking of this week, I mean, they've got a great matchup against the Rams, though. You've got the Rams, their defensive line. Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletic, was just talking about the fact that they have Aaron Donald, who's fantastic, but he can't take 4 spots by himself, and that they're going to get beat a lot. So, I mean, for this week, can we? Does it really look like it could be a split?
That's a tough thing to really say. I think the one thing to know is, specifically when it comes from a Seattle's perspective, is Kenneth Walker's a slasher, right? He likes the big chunk plays. He's a big chunk guy. Meanwhile, you have Zach Charbonnet, who complements him, who's really good at the goal line, really good at short yardage situations. Zach Charbonnet is a guy that will get you what's blocked, maybe a little more. He doesn't really have big play upside like Kenneth Walker. They complement each other very well. Obviously, we know that Seattle loves, trust me, I know better than anybody, Seattle loves the split backfields. I'm having nightmares of the Chris Carson screen pass. I don't know how many times you can run a Chris Carson screen pass. I hope that they don't default to that this year again. Anyway, obviously that's very traumatic for me. But yes, I do think that there's going to be some sort of split. I just don't know how much and to what extent, which is why I mainly, unless the situation called for, or the draft fell that way, I really avoided Kenneth Walker specifically.